Welcome to the Bethany Shipley Show. In some ways, I feel like I am learning how to ride a bike right now. I'm kind of nervous and wobbly and like trying to figure out my sound settings of my microphone because this is something that I have never done before. And the very first episode is called My Obituary, even though I'm not dead. And I wanted to share, because this podcast is launching on my 27th birthday, woohoo! I wanted to share with you the first 27 years of my life. I posted on Instagram the other day that I grew up in a 40-foot Eagle bus, and I was giving some tips on quarantine and how to stay sane in the quarantine, and I got so many questions, and I thought, oh my gosh, like that is a huge part of my life. That has truly made me who I am today, and people don't know that. Like, people don't know the story. So we're gonna dive right in from the day I was born to today, starting now. I was born at something like 7:19 p.m. maybe. I've asked before, but I can never remember. And I was born to Dave and Sonia Thompson of Pensacola, Florida. I was born in Pensacola. They had already had one awesome son, my brother Jordan, who was 17 months old at the time. My dad worked for a Christian college called Pensacola Christian College, and it was actually during the college days, which for his job was in the like recruiting students and bringing them in and showing them the college campus, from what I understand. So this was literally the most intense week of his entire year. And in my Bethany fashion, I, of course, had to make a dramatic entrance. So I guess I was born right in the middle of that week. My dad had to come from college days, like completely delegate everything he was doing to be with my mom at the hospital. My childhood, of course, I don't remember my babyhood that much, but about 2 years after I was born, my mom and dad had a third child, Jacob. And so we have Jordan, Bethany, Jacob, all within like 3.5 years crammed together. 2 years after that, they had another son, Joshua, and then another 2 years or 1.5 years after that, they had my baby sister, Brooke. And so during this time, we lived in Pensacola, Florida, where my dad worked full-time as the everything man at the college. My mom worked part-time in the nursery and or in the school or something. We were in like daycare for those first few years. And then when I was 5 years old, right before my mom had my baby sister, Brooke, she actually went into labor with Brooke around 20 weeks. And so the last 20 weeks, or I guess 17 weeks of her pregnancy with my baby sister, which I was 4.5 or 5 at that time, was extremely intense. She was on complete bed rest. She was literally not able to get out of the bed unless it was to go like to the bathroom. And she had needles and patches and machines sending faxes to the doctors. And it was really a hard time for my family because at that time, and I know my dad wouldn't mind if I share this, I've watched him share it from stages across the United States, and so he's totally open with this. But during that time, my dad actually was experiencing anxiety on a level that he had never been aware of before. You know, now we talk about anxiety and it's so common. We understand panic attacks, we understand anxiety, we understand depression, and we have, I feel like, such a open mind toward mental health. But during that time, it was not talked about. And so as a 5-year-old child, I remember actually watching, I woke up in the middle of the night one time and there was weird lights outside my bedroom window. This was either right before or right after my little sister was born. And weird lights, and I went and peeked out of my window and I saw an ambulance and I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know what was going on. So I ran to check on my mom and dad, or actually not check on them. At the time I was trying to get safe and go to their room and hide like every little kid does. So I went into their room and they weren't there. So I went out in the living room, and my uncle, who actually lived across the street, was there in our living room. And so I didn't know, and I was confused, and I went back to bed really, really scared. And later on in life, I learned that my dad had an anxiety attack, a panic attack that was so severe that he thought he was having a heart attack. For those of you who have had an anxiety or panic attack, you understand how this feels and manifests on a physical level. It's not something that's just like in your head. It's a actual physical reaction. So my dad was like the dude who had it all together, did everything, working insane hours, tons of kids, at this point 5 kids, and he just had like a total like emotional and mental breakdown. So understanding that it was chemical. My parents were ahead of their time. They understood it was chemical. They got hooked up with some supplements and decided to change their lifestyle, but that meant actually moving away from the lifestyle of work. And my dad was a workaholic. And I actually see that as a really positive thing. He is and still is a workaholic. He's extremely driven. We're going to get to that later. But he needed a break and he needed separation. So it was right after my sister was born. I was 5.5 years old, 6 years old. We started going to about an hour away from Pensacola, an hour, I believe it's east, to a little town called Niceville, which is where my mom's parents live and lived. And my grandfather was a pastor of a church there in Niceville, and we started going to church there with them. And slowly through the next few months, it became kind of a place of refuge for my dad. My mom was able to have help with the kids, and it was just like a good fit for that time. So we ended up moving as a family from Pensacola to Niceville. My dad started working at that church. It was a much smaller church. The church that I was at, Pensacola Christian College, was around 5,000 people. And the church in Niceville was, 250, 300 at the time. So it was a much smaller church. My dad was like in the role of youth pastor and music minister, and just, it was really great. So we were there in Niceville for 5 years, and it's kind of a joke, like, Niceville, really? Like, yeah, that's exactly the name of it. Like, it's actually Niceville. We lived in a little neighborhood that was the most American, like, perfect little hometown neighborhood. We had, just so many cute little experiences there. We ended up getting 2 dogs named Popcorn and Pepsi, and had a garden in like the best backyard. And some of my most favorite childhood memories are in that house. There was a bay that was about, maybe not even a mile away. And so it wasn't quite like ocean, but it was, a softer water with a beautiful park. And we would go there during the 4th of July and just sit in the water and play while we watched the fireworks. I'm telling you, there was something special about that time. And I'm sure it had to do with the fact that my family was all super close together. So my mom has 2 sisters. They both had kids similar to our ages, and we were just all right there, like all together all the time. Birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all together. My dad's family is also incredible, but we saw them less often because everyone was kind of spread out throughout the United States. So we would see them at like a major holiday or a family reunion or something. But those were good days. Those were really fun. My grandfather would take us to his land, which was about 30 miles away, and we would romp around in the woods, catch snakes with like, I'm talking, we are children at this point, and we have full-on machete knives, like, and we're knocking down trees. I look back at family videos and I'm like, Mom, why did you let us do that? Like, why did you let us have these knives? And she said, honestly, honey, I didn't think a thing of it. So whatever. We made it. We made it out. We would build forts in the woods, and my grandfather was, and still is, just an extremely extremely knowledgeable in the way of like knowing how to build a garden and build trails, and just it's something that I admire about him. His yard is like full of vegetables, and they have this lemon tree that's massive. I remember when I was a kid, we would go out and pick lemons off their lemon tree, and my Mimi would let us cut the lemons in half and push the lemons down into this little lemonade maker. It was like this, the shape of the lemon, you know, and you push your lemon into it, and then the bowl underneath catches all the lemon juice. She would make us fresh lemonade. They had this tree called a kumquat tree, and it's like a hybrid between a orange and a, like, I don't know, maybe like an orange and a pineapple, but it's really little, so it's sweeter than an orange, or more tart. But we would pick those off and eat them all day. Oh, they were so good. And play in the playhouse. A lot of outside time. Florida is hot, and so we always had a pool around. I remember one time my parents set up this massive pool that was, I don't know. For us kids, it was massive in our backyard. And we made whirlpools in that pool all the time. And I mean, you have like 9 months of summer there. And so we would make these whirlpools. And one time we used the same pool over and over and over, like year after year, because, you know, you can reset it up. Well, it got really hot. The pool got really hot. And we were making a whirlpool. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the most rapid whirlpool, I thought a bomb hit our backyard, because everything, like, I was floating across the backyard. The pool was no longer. What happened was it had exploded. The pool exploded. And so all of us kids on the outside of this pool are like floating opposite ways, all just like wide-eyed, like, what is happening? Oh, so fun. My little sister, her name's Brooke. I love her so much. She was tiny, and we would like put her in the stroller. I do not think this is safe at all, but we did it. We would put her in the stroller and then like ride her around in the pool just where her head was like barely above water. I feel like I'm ratting my parents out, but it's okay. We survived. So while we lived in that house, I had a little cat named Princess, and she lived under my bed. She was extremely antisocial. We had popcorn and Pepsi. There were 5 kids. We had 2 birds. We had like a turtle at one point. So we were a full house of people. And one day my dad and my mom, or actually it was just my mom, came to my room and sat on my floor, and she said, "Hey, I have something to talk to you about that's kind of, you know, a big deal." And I'm like, "What?" And she said, "Well, you know how we've been singing as a family at the nursing home on Wednesdays. It was just something we did. We would sing at the nursing home and like brighten their day. We would then go get pizza. And from the like most delicious in my mind, it's probably gross pizza, but in my mind, it's like the most delicious pizza ever from this little pizza shop. Every Wednesday, and then go to church." She said, "Well, you know how we've been singing at the nursing home?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, your dad and I have decided that we feel called to do this for like our entire life. Like we're going to move into some sort of vehicle that can hold us all where we can live. We're going to sell our house. We're going to sell like everything, and we're going to go on the road." And the word that they used was, we're going to be evangelists. And I was like, "Oh." And at first I was super excited, because that meant like, I'm going to get activity, like I'm going to get a new something, like new life. And then I thought about my cat, and I was like, "Well, but can I keep Princess?" And my mom said, "No, that's the thing. We're going to have to get rid of your cat. We're going to have to get rid of the dogs. We're going to have to get rid of your house." And I realized like, oh, and we're not going to be here. And I was a social butterfly, you guys, like, a total social butterfly. And I wanted so badly for my established social life to continue. And I realized that like all of that was going to change. So I cried some tears, and this is where my like most likely I'm in an Enneagram 3 side of wing 4. This is where I'm most likely a 4. I literally wrote a poem. I'm like 9 years old at this point. I wrote a poem about my cat and how like my cat is the best cat and I'm going to miss this cat. And like my cat never left the underneath side of my bed. My cat scratched every single person it ever touched. My cat was not a good cat. But I was super, super dramatic about it. And to this day, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go back and give my little 9-year-old self a hug and say like, there's more to life than your cat. And of course, those feelings are valid, but also I was being kind of dramatic. And I wish I could say to myself, like, there's more people in the world than the people you know right now. There are more friends to be made than the ones you have right now. It's going to be okay. But in that moment, I was pretty upset about it. And I had to say goodbye to my cat. Gave my cat to a great friend, Pat Fiddler. Thank you for taking my cat and taking good care of my cat till we don't know what happened to it. I think it did pass away. We got rid of our dogs, we sold our house, and everything literally started on the track of, all right, let's do this thing. We bought a 40-foot Eagle bus, enter the bus story, from South Florida about a week into our travels. It was our first tour, and I think our tour was going to be like 9 months long, which is kind of insane when you think about it. Like, my poor mother, can we just take a second and like say my poor mother, because she had to pack for 9 months with 5 kids, having the pressure of like wanting us all to match while we're on stage, and also not having laundry facilities, one teeny tiny little shower, 0 cooking eyes. So we had like an electric skillet instead of cooking eye, like so many little things that I never even comprehended that she was experiencing as a mom, feeling the need to take care of her family. My dad, the stress of like, where is money going to come from? Now, I'll couple this, can we take a second to think of them and also say, like, it was their decision and they decided to do this crazy life. So I guess it evens out. We could have stopped at any time, but our first tour stop was in South Florida. We had a great time. It was beautiful Orange County, Florida. We happened to know friends there. We had a great time, spent time in the pool. And I thought, gosh, I could probably get used to this. And I did get used to it. So those bus days were intense. The bus, let me think of some fun things to tell you about the bus. The bus would get really, really hot when we were driving. So we did a lot of touring in South Florida, through up the East Coast, and a lot of like South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, like a lot of that. And during the 9 months of summer in those states, it gets really hot, especially on the highway, because it's got like a black top. And so here we are, this massive bus that it already takes significant energy to like drive, here we are, like 5 kids, homeschooling, let me add, with these little Becca DVDs on little screens. We're all like trying to hear. We can't even hear because the bus is so loud. We have our little headphones, barely hearing our teachers, and we didn't even know what we're doing. And it would just get so hot. We would get so irritated at each other. And oh my goodness, man, the fights broke out. We would bicker and fight like you would not believe. So it makes sense now why my mom's like, everybody out, get out, go to the bus stop and get out. And like, we would go to these huge gas stations called Flying J's. And that was where we got a millisecond of internet. At the time, I became addicted, and I'm not even being dramatic, addicted to communicating with my friends, aka in my mind, my lifeline, during those bus stop times where we had internet. And I would get on IM. Do you remember IM? I would get on IM and like message people, or I would get on my email and email people. I had a relationship that at the time, it's kind of funny because I was so young, but I literally emailed the same person for like 4 years. So I would email him, and yeah, it was just interesting. This whole thing was interesting. IM was my favorite thing to do, like talk to people. It's so funny. It's like almost like I was born to talk to people. How ironic that I'm sitting here in a quarantine talking to a microphone. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so these bus stop times were fun. Times with my siblings were so much fun. We could talk to each other. My siblings and I could talk to each other through our air vents in our bunk beds. We each had a bunk bed. And I developed a significant desire to have the same tasting water. I hated that the bus water would taste different city to city, and I can taste the difference in water so easily because I don't know, maybe I have a sensitive palate or something. So my dad would buy these massive cases of water bottles, and I would steal them. And I'm talking steal them, and I would put them all under my mattress to where there was no like sign of where, it was very even. I was sleeping on I was doing a water bed when water beds were cool without a water bed. So I had these water bottles all underneath my mattress. And if we didn't have water bottles, this is so sad to say, but if we didn't have water bottles, I literally would not drink water. I would go like a day without drinking water because I did not want to taste a different taste. Going to the bathroom in a bus is disgusting because when you flush, all of the fumes come up and you can just, it's horrible. The first time my dad learned how to empty the tank, the black water tank, which the black water tank is where all the poop is. We were at a Flying J. These Flying J, gas stations and like bus stops are literally designed for truckers. So they have black water tank, like area where you put the water in. And my dad didn't know how to do it, and he accidentally put black water all over the ground. And we have never laughed so hard. I don't know if you've seen the movie RV, but in that movie, they have a similar experience where there's like poop water being sprayed everywhere. And I'm sorry, I'm basically a 5-year-old boy when it comes to bathroom humor, but that is just one of the funniest stories. Maybe sometime I can get my dad on here and talk about it because that would be so funny. We traveled for 5 years, saw some amazing things, met some amazing people. And toward the end of those 5 years, my parents were feeling a shift. I was 14 and a half, 15 years old. My brother Jordan was 16 and a half, 17 years old. And he and I specifically were really craving some structure and like some independence. I mean, you have to understand, we were completely on my parents' schedule, and their schedule was completely made up by pastors booking us. And because it was successful, we were gone all the time. And we had no we had no structure for our own life, we could not be involved in anything that we wanted to be involved in. We had I remember, when all of it broke loose, we were in Virginia, West Virginia. My dad when he's listening to this, he's going to be nodding his head because he's going to remember the night. We had a big breakdown. It was the four of us, my mom, my older brother, me, and my dad. And my brother and I were just saying, like, we want friends. We want a life outside of this bus. We need it. We're craving it. And, they could have been like, you're fine, but they were so gracious, and they said, all right, we're going to start thinking about it. During that time, my mom also was started feeling sick. So that was happening. There were times where we would have like a show or whatever we're going to call it, a service. And my mom was unable to come because she just didn't feel good. And we kind of just, okay, that's how mom is. But it started happening more often. And so my parents got hooked up with a church that was starting in Kansas City, Missouri. And we moved to Kansas City to test it out for 1 month to see if it was going to be a good fit. And sure enough, it was a great fit. We were so excited. Oh my goodness, the kids were ecstatic. I can never explain to you how fun it was to move to Kansas City knowing we're about to have a normal life. I still remember pulling in because we moved here in the bus. And here, I still live in Kansas City, but we moved here in the bus. And when we pulled into Kansas City, I remember seeing the skyline and just feeling like crying because I was like, this is my new home. And yes, I'm probably an Enneagram 3 wing 4 because who cries looking at a skyline? Other than like a pregnant person, me, a 4 or a 3 wing 4. So I don't know though, because I also feel like a 2. We'll talk about Enneagram another day. But so we moved to Kansas City. We got involved with Kansas City East Lions, which was a homeschool sports organization. We're involved with the church, and through Kansas City East, I met this boy named Bethany Shipley. And I was watching Jordan, my brother, my older brother's name's Jordan. I was watching Jordan play basketball, and there was this one guy on his team that stuck out to me in a good way, and it was that he didn't just work hard on offense, but like he also worked really hard on defense. And for that age of a boy, I feel like it says something because everyone wants to be the person that makes the winning shot. Everybody wants to be the person that like scores makes it all look awesome, but nobody, or less people I should say, want to be the one that hustles back on defense and works hard when it's not flashy. And I noticed that this boy, Eli, would hustle back every time. And so I was like, he's kind of cute, and started giving him and everyone else high fives. I didn't want to be too obvious. And I remember one day I was playing basketball and he walked in. Their game was directly after ours in the same gym. And I was dribbling down the court and I saw him walk in out of the corner of my eye. And you guys, I'm a total show off. Like, I cannot help it. I was like, we're going to do this thing. So I actually like went in for got the foul, made the point, made the free throw. Now, does Eli remember these things? He says he doesn't, but I'm sure that I impressed him that day. Actually, what happened and how we actually started talking was that my brother Jordan hurt his ankle, and I had his phone. Eli texted him to check and see how he's feeling, and I texted back that this was his sister Beth. So we started talking. He came over for Sunday lunch one time. I invited him over because I wanted to hang out with him. We just kind of became these like instant best friends. Like, I can't explain it, but everything about our personalities, it was like we were born to just be together. We neutralized each other. It was not stressful. It was not uncomfortable. I just really liked him. So we started hanging out more. Literally, it was that simple. I was 15, and the first time he invited me over to his house to play rock band. So my dad rode with me because I had my permit. So I was driving up his driveway. If you've ever been on his driveway, his family's driveway is insane. So I was like bouncing up the driveway basically because I didn't know how to drive very well, and it was really bumpy. And I kept thinking like, this person he's going to murder me. Like, this is not a normal, I'm so glad my dad's with me. This is not normal. And I called and I'm like, I don't think I'm at the right place. Like, it's really bumpy. He's like, no, it's the right place. Keep coming. So about a mile up this terrain, this rustic terrain, we get to this beautiful log cabin. I go in, meet his sister, who's just like this incredible, she just graduated college. She was like cleaning out their pantry, looked so together, beautiful, like outfit, and just like the most fun personality. And I'm like, she's awesome. And she was the only one home at that time. So I met her, and then I went upstairs and played rock band. And that was like our first interaction where we were actually by ourselves. He drove me back to meet my family that night, and it honestly just like the next few months I spent getting to know him and spent just understanding that he was the one that I would see. This makes me emotional. Like, he was the one that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And I knew people who would say things like, young and in love, or like dumb and young or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, but I know this is different. Like, I always knew in my gut that we were made to be together. And so I told my mom that I really felt like he was the one for me when I was 16. And she said, yeah, I totally agree, honey. I really feel that too. And that was kind of like it. Like, I just knew. We got engaged. I don't want to jump too far there. This isn't just about our love story. When I was 18, actually I was 17, so I was about to graduate. I was entering into my senior year. My mom was really sick at this point. She had Lyme disease. She was bedridden. She was barely making it. And I'm talking drinking Ensure, the drink, the protein drink, to stay alive and to stay above, 95 pounds. It was a hard time. There were some changes happening in the church that we were with. There was some shifts with the job situation, and my mom was really sick. My brothers were all kind of getting involved in their own things, and it was just kind of a chaotic time for our family. And I was really wrapped up in my relationship with Eli. I mean, we were hanging out all the time. So I didn't really have there was no I don't know. It's interesting to look back on this time, but my parents ended up in a split second notice in a 10-day time frame deciding that they were going to move to Colorado to be closer to my mom's sister and to get away from some of the chaos that was happening. And I was entering into my second semester of my senior year. My basketball team was going to nationals. We were doing great. I had a job. I was viciously in love with Eli. And I was like, okay, so I told Eli, hey, my parents are moving and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know. I don't want to go with them, obviously, but I can't support myself, and we're not ready to get married financially or otherwise. We're in high school. I don't know what to do. And so later that night, Eli called me and he's like, hey, Dave and Sandy, which were some friends from church, from his family's church, who I had gone on youth trips with. Sandy was heavily involved in the youth ministry at Eli's church. And, I'm like, yeah. And he said, well, they have a basement that's set up as an apartment and they want you to live with them for the rest of your high school. And I was like, what? I don't even have a car. I had just spent all of my money on this camera because I had a photography class with my high school that was, actually the most crazy situation. The photos that I got were really good, and I posted them on Facebook, and people started asking me to take their family photos. So I was charging $25, which is great money for someone who's 17, for an hour, 30-minute session, and I edit for 30 minutes, and I would get $25. I'm like, that's great money, right? $25 an hour. And so I just bought this camera, and so I didn't have any money to buy a car. So I just had a lot of questions. So 3 days later, my parents and I met up with Dave and Sandy at IHOP on a Sunday morning, and Dave and Sandy, with the most generous and welcoming arms, said, yeah, she can live with us and she can drive our car until she gets something. Their generosity to me goes down in my life book as some of the most extraordinary generosity that I can even think of. There are truly no words. They not only did they let me have a place to live and let me have a car to drive, they also created a stability for me that in that time I really, really, really wanted and needed. And I just feel so blessed because I know not everybody has that when they need it. And I made a decision then, when there is someone who needs something like I needed it in that time, I'm going to show up like Dave and Sandy. And they fed me. They would have food ready for me. I remember the first night I came home from basketball, and it was the first night of me staying there. I was so emotional because my parents had just pulled out. I missed them so much. I missed my younger 3 siblings so much. And I didn't have any food, and I didn't have any money. And I stopped by Price Chopper, which is our grocery store, and I got a $1.19 bag of popcorn and $1 oil. That's because I had $4 in my account. I got $4 worth of food that actually doesn't provide any sort of nutrition, but I was like, I have to eat something. I'm really hungry. And I went home to their house intending to make myself popcorn. And when I showed up, Sandy had fajitas and and like tortillas and everything you could imagine waiting for me in the microwave. And she welcomed me into her living room. She's like, hey, we're watching Biggest Loser. We're watching American Idol. Come hang out with us. And like, not only did they give me that shelter and that place to live, but they also provided friendship. And Eli and I and Dave and Sandy have so many good memories of just hanging out and like watching Biggest Loser. And yeah, just have to shout out to them because that was amazing. So I finished my senior year, did the nationals thing, hung out a ton with Eli and his family. They lived about 2 miles away from Dave and Sandy. Bought my first car, which was a Geo Tracker, black Geo Tracker. That was, it was a stick shift, which is actually really funny because the day that I got it, I did not know how to drive a stick shift. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So Eli drove it home for me, and then he was going to teach me the next day. Conveniently, the next day, he got the stomach flu and was like violently ill. So I literally took an hour to get to the insurance office, and then like 2 more hours to get to my basketball game with I didn't know how to drive this thing, so I was just shutting off every time I would try to push the gas. And I did not have a smartphone at this time. I didn't have like an iPhone, so you can't just like go on YouTube and watch like how to drive a stick shift. It's just so funny, things. So we ended up, Dave took me out and he taught me how to drive it, and it was so fun. I realized that I like burned through my entire like, I don't know, brake pad because I was like pushing. I ended up driving the whole way with my emergency brake on. So I had to get a new one of those, but it was a good time. So after that, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I had worked at a tanning salon, Chipotle. I worked at Outback Steakhouse. And then I heard about this college in Kansas called Berkeley. And it was a college that was free tuition, apparently, if you qualify. And they had a volleyball program. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So Eli and I drove out. My mom actually heard about this college on the radio. Eli and I drove out. It was about 5 hours away. Did a volleyball tryout, which was perfect. Ended up, getting on the team. Shocker. A student count of like 700, and I made it on the volleyball team. I don't know that anyone didn't make it on the volleyball team, so there's that. But ended up moving to Kansas, and that day was really hard because the reason I even went there was because Eli and I had made some goals for ourselves as far as what we were going to be waiting for marriage for, and we were getting to the point in our relationship where our commitment level was extremely high to each other, but it just felt really hard to be in the same city and not have the freedoms that we wanted together, and we wanted to save some of those things for our marriage. And so I decided to move away for that purpose, and that was really hard to do because I loved him so much, and I hated the idea of going long distance. But I went for that semester, had a great time, met some of the most incredible people, had just a beautiful college experience in that one semester. And although it was a free tuition, it was, I did pay for room and board and food, and that was a lot of money for me at the time. I didn't have a lot of money, so ended up deciding to not go back to college for the second semester because I did not want to go into debt with no idea what I wanted to do in my future, other than knowing that I wanted to marry Eli Shipley. And so I ended up moving to Colorado to be with my family. I got a job at Herbie's Auto Sales, where I met some amazing people and worked there for 9 months, 3 months into working there, living on my parents' couch out of a Rubbermaid. They had a really tiny home, and not actually a tiny home, but it was like a fifth wheel or whatever. Not a fifth wheel. What am I trying to say? A modular home. They didn't have a room for me, so I just stayed on the couch. And it was just an awkward phase for me of not really knowing. Here I am in adult life, but not living on my own, saving money for this wedding I was hoping would happen. 3 months into living there, 4 months into living there, Eli put a ring on it, and we planned our engagement and got married 5 months later. Our engagement was so much fun. I counted down the days literally every day I would update my calendar, 99 days, or whatever, 80 days, 70 days. And it was so, so, so fun to be engaged to him. I was so excited. He rode his bicycle from Kansas City, Missouri, all the way to Colorado, Greeley, Colorado, right before we got, permanently moved to Kansas City, and that was just a sweet gesture of him saying, like, he's going to come get me, save me from the modular home couch. We packed up all my stuff, and I remember that drive was so special from Colorado to Kansas City because I was starting a new chapter with this boy/man that I love so much. And yeah, we got married. Our wedding was awesome. Our wedding was huge. We had like 400 people. We got married in a grove in the woods that Eli actually cut all the brush out of. It was on his parents' land. At first, I was really hesitant to get married on family land because I didn't ever want, I wanted it to be special, our spot. But I got over that pretty quickly when I realized how much venues cost. And so he basically curated this spot in the woods that was and is still just so beautiful. Left only the big trees and made benches and watered this grass and seeded it and spent months preparing this site. And then we had a reception in 2 massive tents that were up in a clearing. We had music and dancing and a baked potato bar because we had, I'm holding up the number 0, this much money. We were very, very tight at that point. Eli had gone to school during my college time to be a personal trainer. So he had gone to this accelerated personal training program called NASM. And if you're familiar, he went to Wellspring, I don't know, Allied Health or something, and got this certification, started working in a private gym, started building up his clientele. We moved into, when we got married, this teeny tiny little house, this little apartment that was built in the 1800s. And oh my goodness, this little house had baseboards that smelled like they were rotten. And the kitchen was extremely tiny. I'm being silly, but it was 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. And oh my goodness, what a time we had. One little fun fact is we went to the Virginia Beach on our honeymoon, and we had no money, but also I didn't know I was allergic to mangoes. So here we are saving ourselves for marriage, and and I break out in this face rash because I had to eat both mangoes in the fruit basket. And our entire honeymoon, my lips were blistered and bleeding. Eli we were too young to rent a car. We were 19 and 20. So instead of renting a car and there was no Uber back then, at least that we knew about. And so Eli rode the tandem bicycle that we rented all the way to the drugstore for me so he could get Benadryl and honey because we read online that could help. And I'm just cracking up remembering me trying to eat sushi in my pajamas, sitting on my honeymoon couch watching Eli do a workout that I was so mad that he was doing a workout on our honeymoon. Oh, if I only knew. That would be our whole life. I thought that working out was only for regular days, not special days. So we moved back into our tiny little apartment and just had some of the most fun times together. I was learning what I wanted to be as a wife. I had some pretty high expectations for myself as far as what that would look like. And I had nothing at this point other than my photography business. So you remember that little camera that I bought? Well, I was still using it and taking photos for families. And it was, a great little income, but it was not something that I was pouring my heart and soul into. It was not something that I even really knew what I was doing. I was just, I'll take them as they come. People contact me asking me if I will take their photos, and I'd be happy to do that. So Eli was working, however, like 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. every night at the gym. His clientele started filling up, and I kind of lost myself. And I remember feeling a little jealous of him. Like, he has this thing that he's so good at, that people admire, that he was born for it. And I didn't have that. And it was hard. So I ended up helping him out at the gym some with marketing and filling the gym and getting people in there and just, kind of doing my own thing. I would take like these pictures for him and then use them for Facebook advertising. And then I would also go to the thrift store and buy books and sell them online for more. Or during this time too, I'd kind of gotten into like car purchasing. Like, I would buy a car and then sell it. That was kind of into my Colorado time as well. Buy a car, sell it, buy a scooter, sell it, like a little motorized scooter, just fun little exchanges like that where I could feel industrious, but I wasn't actually committing to a 9 to 5. And about 4 or 5 months into our marriage, we found out by a shock that I was pregnant. And I remember taking that pregnancy test in our little stinky, tiny, weird little bathroom, and it's saying pregnant, and it was like 1 p.m. and I'm like, I do not know how I'm gonna wait till 7 p.m. to tell Eli, and I'm not gonna go up to the gym and tell him in front of people. So I walked to the thrift store and I bought the book called What to Expect When You're Expecting, and on the inside of the book it said, to Beth. It was like a secondhand book, obviously, so I was cracking up at that. But so I told him that I was pregnant. He was shocked. I was shocked. We were crying. It was crazy. So 3 months into that pregnancy, after all the vomiting, after all the blood draws, after all of the routine, tell your family, get excited, we went in for our appointment, and they pulled out this instrument called a Doppler where you listen to the heartbeat. And to our surprise and shock, they couldn't find a heartbeat. So I'd heard this can happen before. I wasn't worried about it. Eli had clients the rest of the evening. So I told him, hey, just go back to the gym. I'll get the ultrasound, make sure everything's fine. And I'm really glad that he followed his own intuition and not my persuasion, because when we went into the ultrasound later that evening, we were shocked and devastated to find out that we actually did not, the baby did not have a heartbeat. And I'll never forget just the absolute disappointment that I felt and the shock. And I thought I was healthy, and I did not want to tell our family. Like, I knew I had to tell them, but I did not want to tell them. I couldn't voice it. I couldn't say it. So I just texted it to both our families, and of course, they were heartbroken for us, and Eli and I went on a drive that night, just driving through the woods, or driving through like these old country roads, and I was bawling, and he was upset, and he was more probably just concerned for me. We had questions about how this would happen. I hadn't even miscarried yet, and I was just... man, that was a hard time. And that, I think, was especially hard because I didn't have personal purpose outside. I had kind of been like, okay, I'm pregnant. Like, now everything about my life is I'm pregnant and I have this role now. I was jealous of Eli having this beautiful purpose in his life of helping people and fitness and all this. And I was stuck like at home making like lasagna because I put that expectation on myself if that's what a good wife does. And then to not have the mom thing was really, really hard. And so I spent the next few weeks just mourning that. I learned about essential oils during that time, which has been a huge part of my life, which we'll get into that too, but learned about essential oils, got into them a little bit. I was coaching volleyball and, just mourning that. And so a few months later, after I had experienced the horrible, DNC, ended up having a surgical removal, because my body was not taking the hints, from pills and everything else that we attempted. And I was just over it emotionally, physically. I was so tired of it. lingering, I ended up going with the surgical removal, and really glad I did. I wasn't ready to handle the physical birth, and I didn't realize that then. But anyway, so did that, and a few months later, we found out we were pregnant again. Right before Christmas, it was pretty fun. My family was coming in town. I was so excited. And of course, there were those fears too that were, okay, will this pregnancy be successful? We ended up telling everyone about it, and it was so fun. It was so fun. Actually, we went to Florida for Christmas to visit my grandparents, and my Mimi had rented this massive mansion on the beach. And it was very important that there was only 29 people in the mansion. Like, you could get really in trouble if there was more than that or something. So I show up and I said, Mimi, I hope it's okay. And I knew it was a big deal. I said, Mimi, I hope it's okay that I brought an extra person with me. And her eyes just got so big because she thought I brought like a friend or someone. And she was like, what are you talking about? No, there can only be 29. And I was like, I know, Mimi, but, and then I said, but they're in my stomach, like the other person's in my stomach. So, and she just started screaming. I come from the longest line of reactors ever. And it was so great. Oh, it was so fun. So had this beautiful pregnancy, had the morning sickness, probably the worst of all of them, honestly, and gave birth to this beautiful, beautiful baby boy, Moses Jordan, on August 19th of 2014. And he changed my life that day. I fell in love with this precious little thing. I was so ignorant though. Like, I was very prepared for a lot of the questions. Like at the hospital, I was prepared with my answers, but I did not understand infancy. And I actually brought, you guys, please don't laugh at me too hard. I brought a rattler to the hospital, like a legit rattler, like for a child to play with. And that was pretty hysterical, actually. I think it's great. I thought that my baby was going to play with a rattler, but no, they don't for like several months. So I kind of hid that back in the bag when I realized where we were at. To this day, Eli and I laugh so hard thinking about me packing that little blue rattler, thinking he's going to come out like ready to shake it. Like, what? Had him and started off on my journey. That same time is when I fell in love with the Young Living business and that motherhood with the business. Oh my gosh, I had this fire about me in that phase. And it was the beginning of the unstoppable version of me. Had so much fun learning that side of me, diving into something, making some money, bringing in an income, it was so fun. Moses turned 1 and I got pregnant again, and I miscarried that pregnancy at around 5 weeks. And then I got pregnant again with this another sweet life. And that one I did miscarry around 8 weeks. And that one was really, really hard for me because I went through the physical birth as well. After I found out that there was no heartbeat, I also ended up delivering that baby, and that was extremely challenging. We were in the middle of a family transition, so we had moved into a little tiny house. We had purchased our first little house, and we decided we were going to buy the house that we're actually currently in, but there was a time in between there that we lived with my in-laws. So we downsized everything that we had, and we were going to move into my in-laws' basement while Eli fixed up this house. So I had just experienced the miscarriage in my own home, and about a month later, we were living with my in-laws in their basement. And honestly, thank God we did, because we needed someone to have Moses during this time. We just didn't know. In the middle of the night, I woke up, and I'm gonna be pretty straightforward with you here. So if this is, past trauma for you or anything, or you're having, little ones listening, just, go in the other room. But I started bleeding in the middle of the night, really, really heavy. I knew something wasn't right. And this was after I had miscarried, so I wasn't sure what was going on. Immediately knew I need to get to the hospital. So Eli ran upstairs, told his parents that we needed to go to the hospital if they could have Moses with them. and we went to the hospital, and I was hemorrhaging, and just literally, I think I almost lost my life that night. I'm so thankful for emergency medicine because they immediately got me hooked up with some morphine, which helped significantly. And I ended up, my body just kind of wouldn't stop thinking that I was pregnant. So created a tissue the size of a football. So basically a massive piece of tissue that was not passing. And it was terrifying. I passed out, and they said, this is actually kind of funny. They said, oh, she's vagaling, which the vagal nerve is something that regulates, I guess, like, I don't know, blood flow or something. So when you vagal, it is where you pass out from your body trying to sustain your blood flow or something. Well, I remembered it as I was passing out, and I wanted to know what it meant. And I thought vagal kind of sounds like bagel. So I'm like, I'm just going to remember bagel, like a pastry, a circular pastry, and I'm going to Google it. So when I woke up from being passed out, I remembered circular pastry. And so I Googled donut, but vonut. So I remembered the V. So vonut. What does vonutting mean? What is vonutting? I couldn't find anything until then I learned, oh, vagal is a bagel, not a donut. My mom came and stayed with us for a week during that time. And that was really, really challenging, but I was grateful to have that be over. A few months later, we got pregnant with our sweet little girl, Lennon. At that point, we were able to move into our beautiful home in our home that we're in now. So that was really fun. We got in right before Christmas. Of course, that was a huge goal, and started our pregnancy with Lennon. And Lennon was born July 14th. Of course, I was still all in right now with my Young Living business, growing every month, every day, every week, all about it. I had this huge goal of hitting diamond. So I had Lennon, and here we are, me, Lennon, Moses. Eli's still working full-time at the gym at this point. I was at the rank of platinum, which is a Young Living term. And that's where you're making about, like, according to the income, like $15,000 to $17,000 a month. So starting to get, pretty significant. Definitely for us, significant. Definitely more than I ever expected to make. Having no college degree and working from home with a baby, Moses, and two babies who were both under 2, I will add. So spent the next 8 months doing infancy with her, doing the business, doing like, can I sustain my life? Can I get outside and still be a person outside of being a mom? It was really a fun time for me to just learn a lot about managing my time and emotions and doing it. So when Lennon was about 8 months old, I hit the rank of diamond, which was my huge goal. And Eli decided that he was going to retire, which came as a total shock for me because he loved what he did. And so I never even mentioned it. Like, I never even thought that it would be a thing. And so when he, one day, we had talked about it a little bit because it was getting to that point where financially it wasn't making sense that he was leaving all day and then I was still having the kids and working all the time. But he loved what he did, and that was important to me that he do that. So one day I was like, hey, if you ever decide to retire, like, just let me know. I'm curious what you're thinking. And he walked out, like he was going to work, and he didn't answer me. And I thought, well, that's weird. He didn't answer me. We don't have a relationship where he like stomps out or anything. And he was definitely, we were both not, nobody was upset with each other in any way. So it was confusing. He came home that afternoon and he said, hey, by the way, I put in my 6-month notice. I'm like, what? What's a 6-month notice? I know of a 2-week notice, but I don't know about a 6-month notice. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be done at Christmas. So this was around June or July. And I was like, what? You're going to be done? And he said, yeah, I just have peace about it. I want to be with the kids more. You want to work on your business more. We don't want a nanny. I want to do it. And so I was shocked. I couldn't believe that. I really couldn't. I was really shocked. And so it was also during that time, halfway through his 6-month notice in October, that I had created this thing called the Diamond Workbook, which went way more seriously than I thought. We were selling a ton of them, and I just was really having trouble managing it all. So I called my dad, asked him how much money he was making at the current job he was at. I offered to pay him more, and within like 3 days, my parents were pulling in their RV to our driveway to permanently live, or not permanently in the driveway, but Kansas City. And my dreams came true that day because I wanted my kids to know their grandparents, and until that point, it had not been possible. They would see each other maybe once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months. And so when they pulled in the driveway, oh, I'll never forget. I had tears, crying. I was so excited. And my dad and I have always worked together really well. We are very compatible in our gifts and what we do and how we do it. So we get each other and it works out really well. So that was when that started. So my dad is now like my assistant, and my mom was like coming into health. She was getting treatment for her Lyme disease and Hashimoto's, and in high school she was really sick, so to see her getting well was amazing. And yeah, a lot of things came together. At that point, we had 2 months together before Eli actually officially was retired, and some crazy things happened at that point in time, and looking back, it's kind of serendipitous. So the day after Eli retired, he started experiencing chest pain, which at first he thought was pneumonia, or like, I guess it's called costochondritis. I'm not even very good at pronouncing that, but went to our natural protocols, and he was, hitting it hard, and nothing was seeming to really work. Ended up going to the, urgent care, getting like antibiotics. That didn't work. Steroids, that didn't work. What in the world? We could not figure out what it was, what was going on. Ended up in the emergency room with a pericarditis diagnosis, which is a infection around the lining of your heart, which if it effuses or bursts can be fatal. 3 nights later, he woke me up in the middle of the night and said, we need to go back to the emergency room. Something's not right. My dad and I carried Eli, who had passed out, into the snow, into the car, shoved him in, and I was on the phone with the emergency, 911, saying my husband has pericarditis. He's passed out. He's not conscious. Should I go to the hospital, or should you come here? And they said, you need to get to the hospital. Come. It was a snowy night. I drove as fast as I could to be safe. I was not safe, but I was trying to be 90 miles an hour through the just windy roads of Kansas City, probably the stupidest thing ever. Made it to the emergency room, and that was terrifying. I thought Eli had died, honestly, in the car. But that was a good season for us, because he was fresh out of his purpose, fresh out of his passion, and entering into a new season of being a stay-at-home dad. And he had some, emotional stuff that he was working through regarding that. And oh gosh, it'd be so fun to have him on here sometime and talk about that. But it was really a special time for us to learn how to navigate the storms of life in that way together. He hadn't always been just this strong husband, shoulder to lie on, the things that media portrays as a man, and all of that was taken from him during that time where he was not strong and he was not a shoulder to lean on. And that was really important for both of us to recognize his value outside of those things. So that lasted for about 3 months. And it was really during that time where I recognized the beauty of what I had built with the business, and the beauty of the residual income, where when I was sitting in the hospital not doing any work, I was still getting paid. And I realized that there were people in the world, in my life, in the team, that will have these seasons. And if I don't paint this picture for them and show them clearly what is going to happen inevitably, then, they could potentially not have that reliance that I had. And so that was really cool. We found out, though, that I was pregnant once again. And wow, that was awesome. Mac was born in October of 2006. 2018. So we had 2014, 2016, 2018 babies. And Mac's birth was a home birth, 10 pounds, 4 ounces, massive, massive baby. First home birth I'd ever had. Just a great, beautiful time. Had one of the most epic postpartum experiences with him. Was just so happy and connected to him. And it was really special time, just savoring that. And the last year and a half, now he's a year and a half old, has been, and I'm sure I'll have clarity more on the last year and a half. All of this makes sense when I'm older. I feel like Olaf in some ways. But it's been simple and it's been special and it's been a lot of just daily life with the kids in school and, cooking dinner and getting the floor clean and attempting, doing laundry, a lot of that kind of stuff. And actually, I have announced this already, but I am pregnant again with a baby due in the late fall of this year. So here we have a 2014, 2016, 2018, and then we will have a 2020. And currently, when I'm recording this, we are in an insane time in our world where the quarantines of COVID-19 has stricken. And the world is falling apart, it feels like, in some ways, and it's also coming together in so many ways. I'm starting a garden. I am raising chickens. We bought 4 chicks, and I'm just learning so much about what it looks like to live life in a big way. So there you go. There's my life, Bethany Joy Shipley, from 0 to 27 today. And thank you for being a part of my story. I know that you don't have to know me and you don't have to care and you don't have to be listening right now, but you are. And I just hope that I can be, by living in my authentic self and living in my purpose, I can inspire you. My hope is that I can inspire you to do the same, whatever that looks like for you. And I'm your cheerleader, even if I don't know you. I'm your cheerleader in my energy and in my life. And I just hope that you feel for me that I care about you and your life. And I hope that you feel blessed and encouraged by anything that I do. So thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes on The Bethany Shipley Show. Mwah.